Hello, party people. Welcome to another issue of One Shot, the Three Best Friends minisode series. I am your one and only host this week, Mike Towndrow. This could be the first time I do a podcast alone, so let's see how this train wreck pans out. So for my first one shot, I want to talk about something that I brought up, I think, on every episode of Main Course so far, which is Record Store Day. Record Store Day is my favorite quote-unquote non-traditional holiday. I always think it's way bigger than it is, but whenever I post about it on Instagram, Twitter, whatever, I always have friends questioning me about it. So for people who don't know, Record Store Day is a day to go out and support local record shops, celebrate music and vinyl culture, and really connect with fellow music lovers, artists, and especially the shop owners who keep this beautiful medium alive. Labels, stores, artists, distributors, they all celebrate by releasing exclusive presses for that day. That eventually leads to hunts for all these rare pressings and vinyl crawls from store to store. So for me personally, I live right outside Manhattan. Downtown Manhattan is really flourishing with indie record shops. So I started out my route at Turntable Lab on East 10th Street. And from there, I just walk, and to this day, every year, I somehow still find a new indie shop that I've never been to, I've never seen. And I'll go in, I'll talk to the people, I'll talk to the shop owners, I'll dig through crates, I'll find something really cool usually. And it's just such a cool experience where you just go out and just talk to people about this mutual love that you have. And granted, vinyl nowadays is pretty massive and kind of in the mainstream. But it's just still cool talking to people who genuinely love it. And I could really seriously gush for hours about like this community and like what it means to me and stuff, but I am a one-man show and you're probably gonna get really tired of my voice really soon, so we're gonna keep this short. So I specifically want to talk about my route and my experience for this year. So my route was, as I mentioned, Turntable Lab, Limited to One, and Generation Records. I do want to shout out Rough Trade, Good Records, NYC, and every little shop between East 14th and Houston that I usually hit up. There's just this time I was rushing around this year and I didn't have as much time as I would have liked or as much time as I normally spend. That's okay because I went really over budget, so it's good that I stopped. So I started out my day by catching the train at around 7 a.m. Getting to Turntable Lab around 8:30, and Turntable Lab opens up at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I know a lot of people who aren't familiar with this kind of tradition are probably thinking that's fucking crazy, and it is. But Turntable Lab is very good with getting the exclusive pressings every year and a nice variation of a lot of the popular stuff. So that line literally goes like around a couple blocks. Sometimes you end up, if you get there too late, you end up waiting hours. And I did that. I made the mistake of doing that last year, and I ended up giving up at Turntable Lab. And luckily last year I lucked out and found things later in the day. But yeah, I got there at a good time. I ended up being on the same side of the street as the store, which is a huge fucking plus. But it's still terrifying because once they open up, the store employees start coming out, and to their credit, which is fucking awesome, they update you on what they have left in stock. So for example, you're waiting online and you see a store employee walk out and your heart starts to race a little bit, and they say, for example, Rolling Stones demo sold out, sorry guys, and so on and so forth. Luckily, none of my stuff sold out when I was still online, because like you end up waiting online for a couple hours, and like if something sells out, like if your number one thing sells out, that sucks, because that means you spent that morning waiting at that specific shop instead of waiting at a different shop who probably or possibly got some more of that stock in, and you have to try to like really cross your fingers and hopefully you find it at another shop. So let me run you through the list of what I picked up this year at Turntable Lab. So I picked up Life is Strange Before the Storm, the soundtrack by Daughter, which is a fucking awesome soundtrack. If you haven't listened to it, please. It's just a good record. It's a silver pressing. It has some like glittery things to it, like glittery qualities to it, let's say. It kind of like shines in like certain light. It's really cool. Super pretty. Run the Jewels put out Stay Gold Collector's Edition box set. It's this really badass gold tin to fit all the other RTJ releases. And then this gatefold specifically, it's a Marvel edition. So it has Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Elektra, and then you would think just more Netflix characters, but they throw Deadpool and Howard the Duck in there. Don't know why, but it's really badass. It's like all them on a police lineup. It's really cool. It also comes with a slip mat, a bunch of stickers, and the B-side of the actual record. It's a clear record with the B-side being an etching of a chain going around the entire record, kind of spiraling from the outside in. Super pretty. I'm probably going to say the words super pretty a lot because that's how I describe how vinyl looks. Next is Touche Amore's demo, pressed on clear vinyl. Also with an etching on the B-side that was spiraling from the outside in, which that was like a very weird coincidence, especially because I opened the RCJ thing first and then the Touche Amore thing. So, and then the last thing I picked up at Turntable was Rage Against the Machine live at the Democratic National Convention 2000. There's nothing really special about the pressing itself. It's just a standard black record. I think on 180 gram, but can't confirm that. But it's just so fucking cool that this is pressed. It's such like I just remember seeing on like MTV News this popping up, and the fact that I have that performance captured on some kind of a recording, let alone vinyl, is just super cool. And it makes me really want Rage to come back, but it's probably never gonna happen. So yeah, Turntable is really cool. Turntable is a really fucking cool shop. They specialize in like boutique record players and speakers and audio systems. They do have a couple like pro audio things like pedals and like effects processors and whatnot. So yeah, if you have any interest in like super nerdy audio stuff, like please go check out that place. It's on East 10th. So the next stop was Limited to One. Limited to One is a new shop, opened up about a year ago, also on East 10th Street, so it was an easy walk from Turntable. They didn't hold any exclusive stuff, but as you could kind of infer from the name, Limited to One specializes in really rare pressings. Sometimes to that namesake, like I found things there that literally wouldn't have been pressed. It's pretty fucking fascinating what these guys could get their hands on. For me, I'm a pop punk, emo, like punk kid at heart. I always will be. And that's what these guys really specialize in. So, for example, me and my girlfriend were digging around and we found My Chemical Romance's first album, an original fucking pressing. And, like, hindsight's 2020, whatever, but I really regret not picking that up. I didn't have the money, and as you can imagine, things are really pricey in this place, especially for stuff that's like super rare. So I couldn't, because what I did pick up was a test pressing of Kevin Devine's Circle Gets the Square. Only 25 of these were pressed ever. And Kevin Devine is an artist I really look up to and really admire. I always tell people he's probably the best singer-songwriter of our generation. So that's something I couldn't pass up, especially because I never had a test press before and I wanted a test press in my collection. So that took the place of My Chemical Romance. And then the other thing I picked up was Gorillaz Feel Good Inc. single pressed on a picture disc. Only 300 copies were released in the UK, and that's it. That one wasn't as expensive, but I have a soft spot for the Gorillaz. The Gorillaz self-titled album was the first album I ever bought by myself at a Tower Records back when I was little. So they always have a place in my heart. So that was another thing I couldn't pass up. I will admit on air that those two alone costed a whopping $140. But I'm not going to linger on that too long. So the next and final stop after that for this year was Generation Records right near Washington Square Park. Generation Records is really cool. They're your typical friendly neighborhood record shop. Like if you say record shop and try to picture one in your mind, you're probably thinking of Generation Records or what that would look like. To me, they give off this very Empire Records, quote unquote, stick it to the man-esque vibe, which I really appreciate. Everybody who works there is super friendly. Everybody who shops there is really cool. I always meet somebody or have a conversation with somebody new. I didn't buy anything from them because, like I mentioned earlier, I was way over budget and I needed to like cool down. But whenever I'm around Washington Square Park, I try to make it a point to stop by just to see what's up, see what's new. And then just to wrap up what I purchased, online that morning, the Yeti pressed Mega Ran's Symphonies of the Night, which is Shovel Knight inspired hip hop album. It's pressed on a gray marble-esque thing with like a cool, if you ever played Shovel Knight, there's the music that you collect. It's like sheet music with just like a big music note on it. It's the center label, which is really cool. Actually just got that in the mail like a couple days ago, so it was a nice treat to get. The last thing I want to shout out with the store specifically, Turntable Lab makes it a point to have live DJs throughout the day from like 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is really cool. It brings out this like really cool like celebratory vibe to start your morning out. Limited to One also had singer-songwriters, and Limited to One is like a tiny shop. So it was cool walking in and seeing everybody crowded around this one guy, there was like three guys on stools, guitar player, singer, bass player, and a tambourine player, just singing. He was covering a lot of like Bad Religion and stuff. And it brought out a really cool vibe, especially to get you in the mood for what you're about to find in these super rare crates. And Generation Records tends to try to get singer-songwriters as well, but they didn't have anybody there this year when I stopped in. So the one final point I really want to bring up is the sort of negative connotation of Record Store Day, which I don't totally agree with, but I see the side of it. People tend to see this as a day of labels, artists, distributors, etc., taking advantage of consumers. For example, like a lot of the stuff that gets pressed exclusively for the day are just represses of, let's say, like a lot of Bowie records, a lot of Prince records, and people eat it up, like understandably, especially after their sudden deaths. People get driven to like pick up their catalog, but I don't really see it that way. Like, sure, like to me personally, if I'm gonna pick up that Bowie record, if I'm gonna pick up that Prince record, I want the early stuff. I want the original stuff, like the original pressing of it. But you're still getting people out to the shops. They're still spending money at the shops. They're still making those connections and experiencing like the live artists that are playing and being a part of the community that's actually being proactive in these shops and paying money to keep these shops and this culture alive. So, I mean, I see where that negative connotation comes from, but I don't agree with it. It gets people on their feet. It gets people active for that day. It gets people supporting the cause, so to speak. And like, negative or not, I really hope this holiday just encourages people to go out to these shops more than once a year. And I'd really like to think that a veteran Record Store Day participant brings a newcomer along, and that person walks into a shop like Turntable Lab and instantly gets smacked with this vibe between the DJ playing and the people having this awesome conversation and this nerdy ass audio gear on your left and right, and just get fucking hooked into this culture. Especially for a person who's not really into vinyl and wants to get into it, wants to learn more about it, wants to know how to start, wants to discover new music. And hopefully that leads to them casually following them on Twitter or Instagram just to see like what new releases are coming out, or what the shop just bought and put on sale, or what cool special guests are coming to either do a seminar or play a set, and just keep leading them back to the shop once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, infinity times a year, and just supporting. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, I could ramble on for hours just talking about how important this community is, and it like really breaks my heart whenever I see a shop closing down because like they can't fucking pay rent. Like, seriously, that shouldn't be happening. Everybody has their love of a certain art. Obviously, mine is music. And to me, music is something that a human can't really live without. So I'm going to end it there. That's Record Store Day. Before I get sappy and sad and angry and all that bullshit. So if you want to keep this conversation going with me, you can find me on Twitter at Teedro1214. That's TEEDRO1214. Seriously, I'm always more than happy to talk music, the culture, the community, record stores, this holiday, anything. I'm a fucking dork when it comes to this shit. Like, this is what I live and breathe. And as for Three Best Friends, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at 3BF Podcast. You can email us at 3bestfriendspodcast@gmail.com. New episodes of Main Course post every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. You can find those on Apple Podcasts. You can find those on Google Play. You can find those on YouTube. Please sub to us on Apple. Please sub to us on Google. please sub to us on YouTube, because once we hit 100 subs, we could get a really cool custom URL, and I don't have to memorize what looks like the goddamn Greek alphabet, and I could plug it to you guys at the end of this podcast. So yeah, with that being said, my name is Mike. Thank you so much for listening. If you're still listening, please give me feedback, because I generally don't know how I did alone. Usually we have like a post-podcast conversation like, oh yeah, it was a good show, but Jake, you talk too much Fortnite. You're a fucking dork, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, let me know. And I don't know how to end. So cut.